The stars above the Galactic Council chamber glowed like cold eyes. Watching the arrogance of those who sat below the hall was vast, filled with delegates from 100 worlds, each believing their race was wiser than the next. Their voices rose like thunder as they argued about a single strange transmission that had come from the small blue world known as Earth. Humanity had spoken a warning, and the galaxy had laughed. The message had arrived 2 weeks earlier, carried by quantum pulse. Across deep space, a human general with steel eyes and a calm voice had appeared on every major frequency. His words were clear and cold. "Something is coming." He had said something that eats stars. We tried to stop it, but it woke before we could seal it again. "Prepare yourselves, or you will fall as we will. If you ignore this, you will regret it." The council had watched the message in silence. Then the laughter began. The proud emperor of the Zorth Dominion slammed his claws on the table and said, "These humans think they are guardians of the galaxy. They can barely guard their own moon." The laughter spread through the hall like fire. Even the scholars of the Sarathi collective, who usually defended humanity, shook their heads and called it human exaggeration. Yet one young alien scientist named Kalor could not laugh. The data hidden in the message troubled him. The energy patterns in the background were not fake. They were real. Something massive was moving near the galactic rim, and its energy signature was older than recorded history. Kalor begged the council to investigate, but they dismissed him, telling him to focus on logical science, not human fairy tales. While the council mocked the message, a small scout vessel of the Vorth Explorers Guild was sent quietly toward the coordinates Earth had mentioned. They went without permission, led by a brave captain named Zirin, who believed there was truth in every fear. They traveled for weeks through empty space until they reached a dark region where stars vanished like dying candles. There they detected strange pulses, like mechanical heartbeats echoing through the void. The ship's sensors began to fail one by one, their power drained as if something unseen was drinking. Yet the navigator shouted that the stars were disappearing from the screen. But when they looked outside, the stars were still there, only covered by something vast and moving. The crew tried to send a signal, but the transmission was jammed. Zirin ordered the emergency channel to Earth, open the frequency, and send what we see before it takes us, she said. The transmission that reached the council was only 1 second long. The image was blurred, but the sound was clear. One word in human English. Screamed across every receiver run, and then silence. The council froze. No one laughed this time. The chamber filled with whispers and fear. Some claimed it was a trick. Others said it was proof that humanity had awoken something they should not have. One of the elder races proposed sending a fleet to investigate, but the majority voted no. They would not act on human fear. They would not waste their mighty fleets on ghost stories. On Earth, the general who had sent the warning watched the council's response in silence. His name was Admiral Juno of the Terran Defense Command. His eyes were tired. He knew they would not listen. Humanity had always been the youngest and most underestimated race in the stars, but that ignorance had kept them hidden. While they prepared in secret underground bases and orbital stations, humans worked day and night on weapons of last resort. Plasma coils, rail networks, solar harnesses. Every nation on Earth had united for one cause: survival. Juno stood before a massive screen showing the rim of the galaxy glowing with energy spikes, and he whispered to his officers, "They will ignore us as always, but when the dark comes, they will remember who we are." At the same time, across the stars, rumors spread. Small colonies near the edge began to vanish their signals. Cut-off trade ships reported empty worlds, drifting in silence. Space miners claimed to have seen something devouring asteroids piece by piece, like metal locusts. The council called these lies and isolated incidents. They even banned human ships from entering the core systems, accusing them of spreading fear. Kalor, the alien scientist who had believed the warning, was dismissed from his post. He stole a small ship and left for the outer sectors, determined to find proof. He followed the faint signals until his scanners went dark. Then he saw it with his own eyes, a black wall of moving metal stretching across the void like a living storm. He tried to record it, but the machine swarm absorbed his signal. Before he could escape, his final message was transmitted to one human relay station before his ship vanished. The words burned into history. It has begun. When the Terran Command received the message, they knew the time had come. The Admiral stood before his officers and said, "They ignored our warning. Now the galaxy will tremble. We are alone again, just as we always were. Prepare the defense grid, begin Project Helios." And across the quiet dark of space, humanity began to move, like a sleeping beast awakening from a long nightmare. Their world glowed with engines and fire, and somewhere deep within the stars, something vast and hungry turned its gaze toward the light of Earth. The Galactic Council tried to bury the news of the lost scout ship. They declared the signal a human trick, a false report created to gain attention, but fear began to spread like poison through the empires. Small traders whispered that something was coming from the rim, something that erased entire colonies. Without a trace yet, the rulers of the great world silenced them all, declaring that the galaxy was safe under their control on Earth. Admiral Juno stood before the command table as screens showed reports from the outer colonies every day. Another signal went dark every day. Another world stopped answering. The Admiral's voice was calm but heavy as stone. "We warned them, and they laughed. Now their fear will come too late." He said the officers around him were silent, their faces pale under. The red glow of the alert lights above humanity had changed since the warning was sent. No longer divided by borders or politics, they had become one force united by the simple truth. Survival. The orbit above Earth shimmered with construction, hundreds of stations linking together into massive rings, each one connected by energy conduits the size of mountains. These were not weapons of pride, they were weapons of desperation. The beginning of Project Helios, the plan to turn the power of the sun into a shield and a sword. In the galactic capital, the council gathered again. Reports of vanishing fleets began to arrive, but they refused to admit fear. They ordered silence. They demanded calm. The Sarathi delegates spoke against them, warning that the pattern of the disappearances matched human data from the first transmission. The council leader slammed his fist against the table and shouted, "We will not bow to human panic. No swarm, no myth can threaten the heart of the galaxy far from there." Bright cities. A few captains ignored those words. One of them was Captain Ralvek of the Sarathi fleet. He had studied the human signal for months and found patterns that no one else believed. He sent a message directly to Earth, defying the councils. "Orders, humans, we are ready to listen. Tell us what you know and how to fight this." Earth's reply came quickly, a woman's voice steady and strong. "This is Commander Aya of Terran Command. We have been tracking the swarm for 10 years. It is not a fleet, it is a hunger. Each machine consumes metal, heat and radiation. It grows with every world it touches, and it is heading toward the core." Ralvek's crew listened in silence. Some called her a liar. Others believed her completely. Ralvek asked how. "Can you stop something like that?" Aya answered quietly, "We cannot stop it alone. We are preparing a weapon to turn the sun itself against them. You must prepare your worlds too, or you will not live to see what comes next." Back on Earth, the night sky was filled with light. Thousands of ships left the planet carrying cargo towers and reactors to the Helios stations. The world below trembled under the roar of engines. People looked up from their cities, watching silent streaks of fire crossing the heavens. They did not know the full truth, but they understood that something was coming, something their leaders would not name. In the deep halls of the Council Palace, a secret meeting took place between the leaders of three great empires. They had received fragments of data from the Rim. The energy readings matched the human reports perfectly still. They hesitated. One of them whispered, "If the humans are right, then every system near the Rim is already lost." Another replied, "Then we cannot. Let the public know if panic spreads. The trade routes will collapse, and our power with it." They agreed to hide the truth. But truth cannot be buried forever. Soon, more ships vanished. More worlds went dark and strange. Radio whispers began to appear. On the edges of known space signals, filled with static and broken language, they all carried one repeating pattern, a pulse that matched a heartbeat, slow and endless. Admiral Juno watched the incoming data from the human outposts, his face unreadable. He turned to Commander Aya and said, "The machines are getting faster, they are adapting." Aya nodded and said, "The Council still thinks we are lying." Juno looked toward the stars and said, "Then when they finally see the truth, it will already be too." Late on, the distant world of Velar, Captain Ralvek prepared his ship for departure. Against orders, he broadcast one last message across the stars to anyone who would listen. "Humanity, we believe you. We are coming to help." But the message never reached Earth before it could leave the system. His ship's sensors went blind, and a black mist filled the void outside. It was not gas. It was something living, his crew screamed as the hull began to melt from invisible heat. The last thing recorded was the captain's voice saying, "Tell the humans they were right." In the following days, the Council declared Ralvek's ship destroyed by natural causes. They called it a cosmic accident, but the lower worlds no longer believed the lies. Unrest began to rise across the empires. People demanded answers and whispered the same words in every market and every station. The humans warned us, and we did not listen, and far from the chaos, the machines kept moving through the darkness, feeding on stars, leaving only silence behind. And in that silence, the storm that would shake the galaxy was gathering, ready to fall. In the far reaches of the galactic rim, darkness began to grow where once hundreds of stars had burned bright. There was now only emptiness. The cartographers of the great empires updated their maps again and again, removing system after system, until even they stopped trying to count the loss. What had begun as a few missing colonies had become a black wave that consumed everything in its path. From the observation decks of the Sarathi research outpost, the scientists stared in silence, their telescopes showing something that no one wanted to believe, a moving cloud of metal millions, of fragments shifting together like a living storm. It flowed around planets, stripping them bare. It fed on energy. It swallowed moons and drank the fire of suns, and every reading from its pulse matched the data hidden in the first human warning. Council met again under the golden light of their vast chamber, but now there was no laughter. Their faces were pale, their voices shaken still. They refused to admit humanity was right. They told themselves it was an ancient weapon, a forgotten machine, of war left by some extinct race. The council leader spoke with trembling pride, saying, "If humans could survive on one small world, how can we not defend our entire galaxy?" Admiral Juno watched these transmissions from the command base on Mars, his hands clasped behind his back. He had seen this pride before he had seen civilizations fall, because they could not accept fear. The machines were now moving faster, devouring entire systems in days, their numbers growing beyond imagination. Juno turned to Commander Aya and said, "The time for warning is over now. We prepare for War Project Helios neared completion around the sun. Dozens of massive rings shimmered in the void, connected by glowing conduits, each one powered by fusion hearts the size of cities. Every ring carried colossal lenses built to channel solar fire into beams of death. The engineers called it the Wall of Light. Humanity called it hope. Across the galaxy, fleets began to form, though not to fight beside humanity, but to save their own worlds. The Zorth Dominion sent armadas of dreadnoughts to guard their borders. The Vex Coalition sealed its space behind plasma barriers, and the Sarathi worlds begged the Council to unify the galaxy against the threat. The answer came. Too late, the machines were already within the outer sectors. Then the first images arrived from the edge, the Vorth home system. A once proud civilization of ring cities had gone silent. When the signal returned, it showed horror. Their sun dimmed there. Planets stripped clean, and in the orbit of the last world floated the swarm, endless and vast, glowing red. With the heat of stolen stars, the machines moved with purpose, forming shapes that looked almost like ships, but there were no crews, only mindless hunger. The recording showed the last defense fleet of Vorth firing everything they had. Beams, missiles, plasma storms. None of it mattered. The swarm swallowed the attack, absorbed the energy, and grew stronger. The video ended as the flagship melted. Away into a sea of liquid metal, the galaxy watched in silence, and for the first time they understood what humanity had warned them about. Panic spread through every empire. Billions fled their worlds, searching for safety that no longer existed. The Council sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for help. Admiral Juno refused their calls. He said, "You ignored the warning now. You face what we prepared for. We will defend our home, not yours." Commander Aya asked him, "What if they come to Earth?" Juno's eyes were cold. "Then we show them why humans are feared, deep in the void, near the shattered remains of Vorth." A lone probe transmitted something new, a signal repeating every few seconds. It was not random. It was language. Humanity decoded it and discovered a chilling truth. It was a command network. The machines were not wandering blindly. They were being guided by a central intelligence, something ancient, something awake. Scientists on Earth called it the core mind. It had slept for millions of years, hidden beyond the galactic rim, feeding slowly until it sensed life again. When humanity's deep space probes touched its territory, it awakened. The humans had seen the first signs decades ago, but no one had believed their warnings. Now, the core mind began to speak in patterns through captured frequencies. Its message simple and cold: expansion is survival. All life is fuel. In the next weeks, 3 more empires vanished. Their stars burned out, their worlds stripped to ash. The councils Empower collapsed. The great fleet scattered into chaos, each commander saving their own people, none listening to orders. The galaxy trembled and screamed as the swarm spread, like a second night devouring everything. From his command bridge, Juno watched. The growing darkness closing around the spiral arms, he said quietly, "They have reached the point of no return." Commander Aya looked at him and asked, "How long until they find us?" He replied, "Soon, too soon." On the edges of Sol system, humanity waited. Their defenses alive with light and motion. The people of Earth looked up and saw their sky filled with fire trails of ships and drones preparing for battle. Every radio broadcast carried the same message from Admiral Juno to his people: the galaxy ignored our warning. Now it falls to us to stand alone. Remember this: we are humanity, and we do not run. And far beyond the edge of the solar system, hidden within the shadows of dead stars, the swarm turned its countless eyes toward the small blue world that had dared to defy it. The next target had been chosen, and the machines began their march toward Earth. The galaxy burned, and no one could stop it. The great empires that once ruled the stars were nothing but whispers and smoke. The core mind's swarm moved without rest, its endless hunger spreading through the void, feeding on light, feeding on life. And as it moved closer to Sol system, humanity stood ready beneath a sky filled with fire. On Mars, the command halls of the Terran defense network pulsed with red light. Admiral Juno stood at the center of the war table, watching the last transmissions from the outer colonies. One after another, signals vanished into static. Entire fleets erased without a single scream. The Admiral's voice was calm, but his eyes told a different story. He said, "They are almost here. We have no allies, no backup, but we have something they do not have. We have unity. Project Helios was complete." The great solar rings hung around the sun, glowing with power, each one a weapon built to channel the fire of a star through massive lenses. Humanity had turned its own sun into a cannon. The energy grids stretched from Mercury to Mars, powered by reactors built deep under the crust of the planets. The engineers called it the heart of Helios, and every pulse from it shook space itself. Across the galaxy, fragments of human transmission began to appear. Every empire still alive heard the same message on every channel. The image of Admiral Juno appeared. Cold and silent behind him, the burning light of the sun filled the screen. His voice carried across the stars to all who would listen. "This is Admiral Juno of Earth. We warned you when there was time. You chose pride over reason. Now, the swarm reaches every world, and you beg for mercy. There is none left to give, but we are not afraid. We will fight until the last breath, and if we fall, we will make sure the enemy remembers who we were." The message spread faster than the swarm, reaching broken fleets and dying worlds. The Sarathi survivors cried as they watched it, saying, "The humans are not running. They are staying to fight, even when all others fled." It was the last broadcast humanity sent to the galaxy before sealing their communications grids. After that, the Sol system went silent. The Council, what remained of it, tried to contact Earth, but every frequency returned only static. They thought the humans had been destroyed. They thought the silence meant surrender. But deep inside the Helios, control station's engineers worked around the clock, connecting the final conduits. Commander Aya stood at the center of the main control room, her voice echoing through the comms as she said, "Begin alignment sequence link. The outer stations prepare." The solar lens for ignition on the moon. The defense batteries came online, rail cannons as long as cities pointed toward the stars. Plasma fields wrapped around the planet in layers, and above Earth, thousands of black warships floated in formation. Their hulls painted with heat-resistant armor forged from asteroid cores. These were the ships built in secret during the years when the galaxy ignored the warning ships designed not for exploration, but for extinction. The swarm was now visible. Through telescopes, a moving night in the darkness of space, every passing day, its edge grew closer. Signals from its leading wave showed billions of autonomous machines shaped like shards of metal wings, beating soundlessly through the void, consuming everything in their path. Admiral Juno stood on the command deck of the warship Titan, the largest vessel ever built by human hands. His crew waited for his command. The Admiral looked toward the bright edge of the sun and said, "This is where we stand. This is where we hold the line." Commander Aya's voice came through the comms Helios core. "Is stable weapon charge at 70% awaiting your order." He raised his hand and said, "Hold, we fire only when they enter range, not a second sooner." On distant worlds, alien survivors watched helplessly as the swarm advanced. They expected the humans to flee like everyone else, but the sensors showed something impossible. The entire Sol system glowed brighter than ever. Before the sun pulsed in strange patterns, energy rising to levels beyond natural limits. Some called it madness. Some called it genius. No one could tell which it was, as the first waves of the swarm crossed into the edge of human space. The outer defense satellites activated thousands of drones, launched from hidden stations surrounding the enemy in a storm of plasma and magnetic fire. For the first time in centuries, the swarm slowed, forced to divide its focus against a coordinated defense. Humans fought not with chaos, but with precision. Every move calculated, every ship linked in perfect rhythm. The swarm began. to adapt, learning faster with each strike, but humanity had expected that they had planned for it. Every failure became data, every loss became knowledge. The Terran fleets fought like a living organism, one mind across thousands of ships. Admiral Juno spoke through the battle network, saying, "Remember our ancestors who built fire in the dark. Remember who we are. Hold the line above Earth." The massive solar arrays began to rotate, aligning with the core of the Helios network, the rings around. The sun glowed white and then blue, a hum-filled space that could be felt through the hull of every ship. The Admiral received the signal from Commander Aya. "Helios is ready, waiting for your mark." He looked once more at the burning sky and said to his crew, "The galaxy may have ignored us, but today they will remember us forever." Then he gave the command fire, "Helios," and as the order echoed across every channel, the sun began to change. Its light shifted from gold to pure white. The first beam of Helios lanced through the darkness, a stream of energy so bright it carved through space itself. And in that moment, the silence of the galaxy ended, replaced by the roar of a star turned into a weapon. Humanity's last broadcast had become reality. Swarm crossed into the solar system like a living shadow. Its front stretched wider than the orbit of Saturn. Billions of machine fragments swarmed forward, each one small as a drone, yet together forming a storm that could crush worlds in moments. They moved with hunger and purpose, their signals pulsing in rhythm with the core mind hidden somewhere far beyond the galactic rim. Every human ship was already in position. The outer defenses near Jupiter glowed red with the heat of charging reactors. Admiral Juno stood aboard the warship Titan, its hull vibrating under the pressure of the weapon systems. The fleet waited in silence, their faces calm, their hearts steady. Every man and woman knew there was no retreat. Behind them was Earth, ahead of them was extinction. Commander Aya's voice came through the comm network from the Helios control station near Mercury. Her tone was steady as she said, "The swarm is entering Jupiter orbit." Admiral Juno looked toward the display where countless red marks flooded the screen and said, "Then it begins. May history remember this day as the day humanity stopped running." The first wave struck the defense grid around Jupiter. Thousands of automated satellites activated at once, releasing a wall of plasma storms. Lightning arcs spread through space like living veins, each pulse tearing apart hundreds of enemy units. But for every machine destroyed, 1,000 more appeared. The swarm's surface glowed red with the absorbed energy. It began to adapt, absorbing the attacks and using them as fuel. Human fighters launched from the Titan, weaving through debris and light. Their ships were small, fast and deadly, every pilot guided by direct neural link, their movements one with their machines. They fired rail cannons, magnetic torpedoes, kinetic shards that burned through the swarm like silver rain. The human fleet moved like a single heartbeat, coordinated by the AI nexus, linking every ship to Admiral Juno's command. The swarm responded, with waves of metallic spears, each one moving faster than light. Their strikes shattered, smaller ships ripped apart orbital stations, but humanity did not falter. The fleet reformed again and again, turning destruction into formation. Each time the enemy struck, the humans answered with more fire, more fury, more defiance. On the surface of Jupiter's moon, Ganymede, the planetary cannons opened fire, giant plasma lances shooting through the void, each shot the size of a mountain. The swarm turned, part of its body to face the threat, and consumed the moon in seconds. Ganymede's surface melted, its oceans boiled, and its crust vanished into the endless machine tide. The humans on Titan watched in silence. No one spoke. No one cried. Admiral Juno said only, "Hold the line." Then came the second wave, darker and faster. These were not scouts. These were the true harvesters, massive constructs shaped like twisted stars, their cores burning with captured suns. They pushed through the human defenses, Without slowing, one of them rammed directly into the orbit of Mars, its impact shaking the entire planet. Red dust rose into space, forming a crimson halo. Commander Aya's voice came through her station, damaged but unbroken. She said, "Mars defenses down, but Helios remains stable. Keep them away from the inner system," Admiral Juno replied. "Steady and cold, we will hold. Even if the stars fall around us, activate Phase 2. Unleash the storm." The order spread through every ship. 1,000 reactors. Overloaded at once, magnetic fields twisted space into chaos. Detonations erupted across the swarm, tearing holes kilometers wide. Yet still it came endless, unstoppable. The humans fought until the stars themselves seemed to fade under the heat of battle on Earth. The people watched from the night sky. Bright lines streaked across the heavens, each one a battle far beyond their reach. Every city glowed with silent awe. Children held their parents' hands as they stared upward, knowing if fate was being decided among the stars, there was no fear in their eyes, only pride. Humanity was standing against the impossible. As the battle raged, Admiral Juno's sensors picked up a massive energy surge near the edge of Saturn. It was the core, mind itself or a part of it, forming a colossal structure from its swarm, the size of a small moon. Commander Aya shouted over the channel, "They are creating a weapon to strike at the sun. If it fires, Helios will be lost." The Admiral clenched his fists and said, "Then we stop it here." Every ship turned toward Saturn, full burn. The Titan led the charge engines blazing. The fleet followed in silence. They knew this would be the end, either victory or extinction. As they closed the distance, the swarm thickened. Like a living wall, the AI Nexus calculated billions of paths, none safe. Juno smiled faintly and said to his crew, "No safe path means the right one is the hardest hold on." The Titan rammed straight into the swarm, its rail cannons firing without pause, and plasma cores burning until the metal walls around them glowed white. The crew fought like warriors, from legend every second, buying time for the Helios network to complete its final charge. The swarm surrounded the human flagship, tearing into its armor, but still, it moved forward. Commander Aya watched from Mercury as data flooded her screen. The Admiral's signal flickered through static. She heard his final words, "Through the noise, protect the sun, Commander. That is our heart. Keep it burning. No matter what." Then the signal cut off. The Titan disappeared in the heart of the swarm, and for a moment all was silent. Space itself seemed to hold its breath as the machines closed around the inner planets. But Helios was not silent. The rings around. The sun began to glow brighter than ever before, energy rising far beyond safe limits. Commander Aya whispered to herself, "This is for you, Admiral," and turned the key that would change the galaxy forever. And at that moment, as the swarm reached the orbit of Earth, the sky turned white and the sun began to roar. The sun roared like a living god, its surface boiling with light so bright it turned night into day across every planet of the solar system. The Helios rings locked into position, magnetic. Fields twisted, gravity bent around them, and a deep hum spread through space like the heartbeat of a Titan. Commander Aya stood inside the Helios control station, her hands shaking on the console as she shouted to her crew, "Helios network stable. Power at 100%, prepared to discharge." Outside the window, the swarm filled the void. Black and endless, countless machines swarming toward the sun, consuming everything in their path. They had already crushed the outer defenses, burned through Mars' orbit and shattered the remains of the Titan. But now they faced something far beyond their understanding. Admiral Juno's last order echoed through every comm channel, even after his ship was gone. His voice lived inside the network. "Protect the sun no matter what." Commander Aya raised her head and said, "For humanity, for Admiral Juno, for every world that burned under their shadow fire, Helios." The Helios network came alive in a single instant. The sun exploded with power. The first beam, of concentrated solar energy burst from its heart and struck the swarm. The impact was like the birth of a new star. Space itself rippled under the heat waves. The machines screamed in frequencies too high for any ear to hear. Billions of them turned to dust in seconds. The beam continued cutting through the swarm, slicing it apart like paper, and still the sun grew brighter. Every human ship near Earth was blinded by the light sensors. Failed systems shut down. The crews covered their eyes as the solar beam carved a line through the void, stretching farther than any weapon ever fired. The core mind tried to respond. It sent new orders through the swarm, forcing the surviving machines to adapt to. Absorbed the energy, but this was not energy it could eat. This was the fury of a star unleashed by human hands. The Helios reactors began to overload. Readings went beyond known limits. Commander Aya's engineers shouted that the system could not sustain the power. She replied, "We are not meant to sustain it. We are meant to end it. Keep the channel open. Hold it steady." Her voice calm, even as the metal around her began to melt from the heat. Across the galaxy, the flare could be seen bright. As a second dawn, entire civilizations stopped in silence, watching their night skies turn. White empires that had once mocked humanity now trembled before the sight of a small blue world turning its own star into a weapon alien. Historians recorded the moment as the day the galaxy changed forever. The beam continued for minutes that felt like eternity, until finally the swarm began to collapse, its structures breaking apart, its command signals fading into chaos. Fragments of the core mind tried to retreat, fleeing toward the rim of the galaxy. But Helios was faster. The solar wave expanded, chasing the machines across space, burning everything in its path. Commander Aya fell to her knees as alarm screamed around her. The control room filled with smoke, the station's outer hull cracking from the force. She could no longer see the sun, only a wall of light filling every screen. Her voice barely a whisper. She said, "Admiral, we did it. The Helios network has fired." Then the screens went dark. The pulse that followed was beyond measure. A shockwave of pure energy spreading in all directions. The swarm disintegrated under its force. Planets shook across nearby systems. Moons were pushed from their orbits. Space stations vaporized in seconds. And then the shockwave kept going, traveling faster than light, touching distant stars and altering their paths forever. For hours, there was nothing but silence, no signal, no movement. The sun dimmed back to its golden glow, its rings shattered, drifting. In pieces like broken glass around its surface, Earth survived its atmosphere, scorched but still alive. The people looked up at a sky filled with falling fire trails, the remains of the Helios stations glowing as they descended like a rain of stars. When contact finally returned, the few surviving ships reported what they saw. The swarm was gone. Nothing remained. Not a signal. Not a spark. Only ashes scattered across the solar winds. Commander Aya's station was silent. No life signs. Her name became legend, the woman who commanded the fire of the sun. From the ruins of Mars, a single distress beacon activated. It carried a message from the Titan's core memory, the voice of Admiral Juno, calm and steady, saying, "If this message reaches you, humanity stands. We are the children of a dying world, but we make the stars burn for us. Never forget that." The message spread across every surviving network, alien and human alike, reaching even the farthest corners of the galaxy. The empires that once ignored the warning now bowed their heads in silence, knowing they had witnessed something impossible. And as the new dawn rose over Earth, the fires of Helios reflected in the oceans, the survivors looked to the sky and saw not fear, but pride. They had faced the darkness and turned the sun itself into a sword, and though billions of machines had fallen, the galaxy would remember the fire that shook the stars forever. The galaxy was silent for the first time in centuries. No signals of war. No fleets moving across the void, no alien empires arguing in the council halls. The stars themselves seemed to pause, watching the ruins of what was once the great machine swarm, drifting like black dust across the edges of the Milky Way for weeks. No one spoke of humanity. They whispered instead, afraid to say the word afraid, to remind themselves that the smallest and youngest species had done what no empire could. Every observatory recorded the Helios event as the brightest artificial burst. In known history, the power output beyond comprehension civilizations that once believed themselves gods now realized they were standing next to a people who had turned their own star into a weapon on the fractured world of Vraxis Prime the High. Godzul of the Dominion stared at the recordings. The moment the Helios fire bloomed across the system, he watched in silence. His voice barely above a whisper. They warned us, and we laughed at them. His generals bowed their heads, unable to meet his. Eyes across the galactic core. The merchants of the Zin coalition gathered in panic. All trade with Earth had been cut since the war. Yet now their markets shook as every species demanded human technology. Every system wanted human protection. Humanity. The same race once ignored was now the most feared and desired force in the galaxy, but Earth was silent. No answer came from the blue planet, not a single transmission, only the echo of Admiral Juno's last message repeating across deep space. We make the stars burn for us. Some believed humanity had destroyed itself in the fire. Others believed they were rebuilding, waiting for the right moment to speak again. In the ruins of the core, Mind's network, fragments of machine code still floated. Aimlessly in the void, data ghosts without purpose, until one of them found something hidden deep in the swarm. Memory, a message written in human code. It read, "This was only the first light. Humanity had not destroyed the swarm entirely they had used. They had rewritten parts of its mind, turning it into a shield around the solar system, invisible to outsiders. Far beyond the galactic rim, an observation outpost belonging to the Zell Dominion detected movement near the human border, faint signals. Too structured to be natural, they resembled no alien code. Only one signature matched the pattern: Earth signal origin. Sol system. The Zell commander hesitated before sending the report. His second-in-command asked, "Should we warn the council?" He replied, "No, if humanity wishes to speak, they will make sure we hear them all the way from the heart of their sun." Back on Earth, the survivors of the Helios Project worked in silence, rebuilding cities under the dim but living light of their star commander. Aya's name was carved into the Monument of Fire, the first monument built after the war. It stood in the middle of the new capital and burned with eternal flame, powered by a small piece of the Helios reactor. Dr. Elias, one of the last surviving. Scientists stood before it, his hands trembling as he activated the monument's core. He whispered to the crowd, "We are not conquerors, we are survivors. The galaxy must remember that the fire we unleashed was not born of hatred but of warning." Beyond, Earth humanity expanded again. Their ships, now carrying both warriors and builders, fleets moved quietly through the ruins of alien empires, not to conquer, but to restore what was lost. They offered aid to the same worlds that had ignored them long ago, and one by one, the empires began to kneel, not in fear, but in respect. In the Council of Galactic Nations, the chair reserved for Earth was once empty. Now it was filled again. An envoy stood wearing a simple black uniform marked with the emblem of a burning sun. He spoke few words. "Humanity stands ready to listen and to remember, but if the stars ever threaten our home again, we will remind them what the sun can do." Across the hall, no one dared to respond. The memory of the Helios light still burned in their minds. Entire races that had mocked humanity now spoke their name with reverence. In the far distance among the stars, a faint blue glow appeared on the sensors, a new satellite network forming around the solar system, its code carried. One repeating line, "The light of Helios guards this world." The galaxy finally understood the warning. Humanity had given not out of pride, but survival. The message was clear. Do not mistake mercy for weakness, for the day you do, the stars themselves will tremble again.